My name is Nicole Dehne. I'm the director of Vermont Organic Farmers, and I'm here to talk to you today about organic certification and give you an introduction to what this process means and what this process looks like. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about our organization. Vermont Organic Farmers is an LLC. We're also a USDA accredited certification agency, and we're owned by the nonprofit NOFA Vermont. So we started in 1985 by a group of farmers. We have served as a third-party verification for organic food production since that time, and we have also been accredited by the USDA National Organic Program since 2002, which is when the National Organic Program came into effect. We certify close to 800 farms and processors. We only certify within the state of Vermont, and those farms include lots of different types of farms. So we certify vegetable, dairy, livestock, and more organic maple producers than any other production type. So the reason it's important to talk about the structure of our organization is because having a USDA certification program that is owned and connected to a nonprofit affects our approach to certification because it instills values into the certification process. And so traditionally, those values have been to ensure that the organic certification process and practices have integrity, to ensure that producers are engaged and have a voice in the certification process. And one of the tenets for the foundational principles for organic certification have always been about striving for continuous improvement, both for our farmers and for our organization. So, of course, organic farming has always been about values-based farming. And another one of the foundational principles for organic farming has been about healthy soil. And the idea was that focusing on healthy soil would be what created healthy plants, and in turn, healthy animals, and then in turn, healthy people. So this was in contrast to the more conventional approach that saw the soil as more just a medium to hold the plant and then, give the plant what it needed through synthetic fertilizers and protect the plant through herbicides and pesticides. But organic farming has always been about making sure that soil itself is healthy so that we can produce healthy plants. Another value in organic farming has always been about protection of natural resources, the promotion of biodiversity, working with natural systems versus against natural systems. So learning about a pest's cycling so that we can understand how to break that cycle, for example, and then of course, continuous improvement. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about the growth in the industry, just to give a sense of, where we're at now and where we have been in the past. So U.S. sales of organic food and beverages grew from $1 billion in 1990 to $61.9 billion, according to, recent industry statistics. So that's this huge growth in popularity for the organic market. And yet, we like to see ourselves as like having arrived, as being considered mainstream, but we are only 6% of the total food and beverages sales in the United States. So we really have a long way to go before we are, mainstream and have really infiltrated into the common kind of consumer. If you look at organic as a percentage of U.S. total, then those numbers look a little bit different. So for fruit and vegetables, organic fruit and vegetables are 14% of the total fruit and vegetables sold in the U.S. Dairy products are 8% of all the dairy products sold in the U.S. 8% of those are organic. 5% of all the layer hens in the United States are managed organically. And unfortunately, only 1% of all of the acreage in the U.S. is certified organic. Now, if you look at these numbers just to the state of Vermont, it's a little bit of a rosier picture because we have about 20% of all the dairy farms in the state are certified organic. And in addition, we have the most organic farms per capita in the state. So how is the organic program structured? So the National Organic Program is housed within the United States Department of Ag. And the USDA is in charge of enforcing the term organic and also accrediting certifiers. They do not certify operations. They accredit certifiers to do that work. So it's the certifiers who are applying the rule and certifying the farms and processors. There's one set of national standards, so we're all working from the same set of regulations, but these regulations are intentionally broad in order to be applied to all different types of operations, for dairy farms to maple. Some of the rule is specific enough to address specific production types, certainly, but broad enough so that certifiers can make decisions that apply to specific scenarios. So it's good to sort of understand too that in some ways there are two definitions within the National Organic Program about organic, right? There's this negative definition that probably most people are aware of, which is when you think of organic, you probably think of the absence of chemicals, right? So the rule describes this as food produced and handled without synthetic substances. There are some specific, limited exceptions to that rule, and we'll get into that later. We don't allow GMOs, sewage sludge, and radiation. So that's sort of like the absence model, the negative definition of organic. But because there's often more familiarity and focus on the negative definition, we forget about this positive definition, which is incredibly important, which is really all about what farmers are trying to achieve, right? So it's an organic system that integrates cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. And this is, these are terms pulled from the National Organic Program rule. So what are the organic standards exactly? They are a set of definitions and practices that encompass both organic farming and organic processing. So if you want to produce an organic salsa product, then there's also regulations determining, how you can do that, and how you can label it, what ingredients you can put in it, that sort of thing. So there are different sections of the rule: a section for crops, a section for livestock, and a section for processing. And then the rule also includes what's called the National List of Allowed and Prohibited Substances. And essentially, the National List is sort of the tools that are allowed for producers to use. So in general, everything synthetic is prohibited, except for a short list of allowed synthetics. And then everything natural is allowed, except for an even shorter list of allowed naturals. So for example, arsenic is a natural ingredient, but it's a poison, so that's a prohibited natural. And then an allowed synthetic might be like anesthetics allowed for livestock production, or baking soda allowed in organic processing standards. So it's important to realize that the standards are dynamic, they continue to be improved, and they continue to be improved with input from farmers, from consumers, from nonprofits, and from private businesses. So I'm just going to very quickly go into a little bit of some of the standards for crop and livestock. So for crop production, farmers are required to feed the soil with the use of cover crops, green manures, compost, and animal manures. Like I said, no toxic pesticides or synthetic fertilizers are allowed. Farmers have to work to protect ground and surface waters from contamination of nutrients and chemical. They are required to rotate crops to improve soil and also to prevent pest and disease problems. So often, because the tools that organic farmers have in their toolbox are not as they don't work as well as the tools that conventional producers have. So really what organic producers have to do is, and this is also required in the standards, they have to prevent the issues from occurring in the first place. So hence the rotation of crops, hence the picking out varieties that are resistant to certain diseases. Prevention is a big piece of the organic farming puzzle. So for livestock production, animals have to be raised on organic feed. They can't be raised with the use of hormones or antibiotics. They have to be raised in a stress-free environment, and they have to be able to exhibit natural behaviors. So some of those natural behaviors would be dust baths for chickens or rooting for poultry. I'm sorry, rooting for pigs. And then healthcare treatments that farmers use have to be natural, or they have to be an approved synthetic. So, like I said, another example again, the anesthetics for dehorning. Animals have to have access to the outdoors year round, and ruminants must be raised on pasture. And there's very specific regulations on exactly how much pasture and for how long pasture has to be available. So the organic certification process is a three-part system. The first part involves the organic application, or what's called the organic system plan. And the organic system plan is basically a description of all the practices that the farmer is going to engage in their during the upcoming year. So how they're going to improve soil fertility, what their crop rotation schedule is, a description of all the fields that they certify and the acreage of all those fields, a description of the plants they plan to grow. Those are, some examples. And the organic system plan is filled out every year. We at Vermont Organic Farmers have an online application, so you can fill it out paper, but then you can also fill it out online. And every year we give you the information that you gave us the year before back to you, and then you just update it for changes. So every farm has an annual inspection, and those are prearranged, and the inspection is essentially, the role of the inspector is to verify that what you said you were doing in your organic system plan is what you are actually doing. So that happens every year, as well as a certification fee that you pay every year to cover the costs of the review of the organic system plan and the payment for the inspector. Luckily, the certification fees are reimbursed by the USDA for 75% of the cost of certification, up to $750 per scope. And the scopes are crop, livestock processing, and wild crop. So again, this is an annual process. Every year you submit your organic system plan, you have the inspection, and you pay the certification fee. So generally this is a trust-based system, and it's also backed up and supported by education so that people understand why they're doing these practices and hopefully come to believe in them. However, there are also parts of the system that are also, surprise and unannounced to kind of verify that that trust is warranted. So when you sign up to be certified organic, you also will get, we do residue testing on 5% of all the operations that we certify, and we also do unannounced inspections on 5% of all the operations we certify. So we're basically doing about 80 samples and unannounced inspections a year. So a big piece of the organic certification is record keeping, right? So all farmers and processors have to keep records that demonstrate how they comply with the rule. And that means you basically have to, keep receipts and records that allow us to see the activities and transactions that you've had as a business. Technically, those records have to be maintained for up to 5 years. And basically, again, these are records of activities that span the time of when you purchase or acquire a product through your production, and then finally through the sale or transport of the product. So producers have to maintain records that trace back to the last certified operations in their supply chain and then forward to their customers. So that might seem like a lot, that might seem a little intimidating, but usually these are all records that you want to keep for your own analysis of your business anyway, right? So we're talking about, if you're a crop producer, we're talking about your seeding records, your planting records, if you're spraying any pesticides, which again, you'd have to show first that you sort of you tried to prevent the pest from occurring in the first place, but you would keep track of what you sprayed and what date you sprayed, harvest records, and then records of sale. Again, a lot of these records are really handy to give you good information about your business and your farming practices. So during the inspection, the records are going to be used to do two things. There's going to be a traceability audit where basically the inspector is going to take a final product and see if they can trace it back through your records to acquisition. So if it's, if they're looking at a bunch of carrots, they're going to look back to say, when were these harvested, from what field, when were they seeded, and from what seeds were they purchased. And then the mass balance audit is the inspectors are going to pick a product and they're going to say, okay, they're going to look at the size of the operation and how many row feet were planted to a particular crop. And they're going to say, what is a reasonable yield for this crop? And then they're going to look at the sales records to see that that you're not selling more than what would be expected based on the acreage and square footage that you have and planted. So if that sounds intimidating, we as an organization and through support from the USDA are here to support you. So there is a new program called the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, or TOP. And TOP, the USDA is investing up to $100 million over the next 5 years to work with nonprofits to help the nonprofits provide technical assistance and support for farmers that are interested in transitioning to organic production or just learning more about organic production. So NOFA Vermont has a farmer-to-farmer mentorship program that people can enroll in. If, like I said, if you're interested in organic practices or interested in getting certified organic, either one is okay. The farmers that are the mentors get paid. The mentorship, if you're a new farmer, you'll be paired with an organic farmer for a mentorship, and that mentorship will last 12 months. So mentees get this incredible opportunity to learn from an established organic farmer, and there's also a $500 educational stipend to attend an educational event with their mentor. So if you're interested in the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, and in general, if you have any questions about organic certification, we encourage you to get in touch with us. So that is really just a quick introduction to Vermont Organic Farmers, to organic certification. I think the real message here is email us, call us, get to know, don't make assumptions about what the organic certification process is. Call us and ask, and we are here to support you. So thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.